Listen up, folks. I'm going to tell you a ghost story that starts right in the heart of Thailand, a place famous for some seriously classic and terrifying horror movies. You know, some of those films were so scary, they never even made it to the screen. I'm talking about one production that was shut down forever because the director actually dropped dead. And the kicker? He died right inside the supposedly haunted house they were trying to film in. Now, to make a hit horror flick over there, screenwriters look through dozens of scripts. It has to be creepy, it has to be unforgettable, and it really helps if it ties into real life somehow to draw in the crowd. The story I'm about to share is widely known, passed around by a horror scriptwriter who was actually scouting spiritual hotspots in Thailand. So, here we go. Uncle 3 is telling this story that's kind of nested inside another story, you know? The scriptwriter was searching online for the most haunted spots in Thailand, and the online community pointed him toward this one specific house. When he heard the initial details, he thought it sounded intriguing, so he went straight there to scope it out. He planned to write a new movie script based on this real-life tragedy. This all went down back in the 1990s. The story is about this guy who sold Kuay Teow. That's a super popular Thai noodle soup, often made with pork or beef bone broth. Let's call him William. William had a rough life. He married late, around age 40, and that's when his son was born. Unfortunately, due to her age, William's wife passed away right there at the hospital. But hey, the son made it out safely. Thank goodness. William promised himself he'd dedicate his entire life to raising that boy. The happiness of being a dad actually managed to push aside the pain of losing his wife. But that peace didn't last long, man. 7 years later, when the boy was just 7, a huge tragedy struck. One day, William was cooking his Kuay Teow, and he wasn't paying close enough attention to his kid. The child accidentally fell right into the massive pot of boiling soup. That is heartbreaking. And sadly, it happens way too often around the world because of parental carelessness. William rushed his son to the nearest hospital. The doctors took one look and gave him the worst prognosis. After fighting for 3 agonizing days, William's son died from 3rd-degree burns. William brought his boy home for the funeral, and the community was totally heartbroken for him. Lots of people showed up to pay their respects. They truly felt for this man, 40 years old. First he loses his wife, and now his son is gone in such a terrible, tragic way. Before long, William fell into a severe, deep depression. He shut down everything. No more cooking soup, no more selling Kuay Teow. William just completely isolated himself. He locked up the shop and stopped talking to anyone. People stopped dealing with him. Occasionally, folks would see William going out to the market to buy groceries, maybe once a week. This went on for a while, and then one day, he just didn't come out anymore. Everything was silent, but people didn't really pay attention. That is, until the terrible smell started wafting out of William's house. By then, the neighbors knew exactly what had happened inside. The neighbors immediately called the Thai police. The police had to break the door down and found William had hanged himself inside the house. Since William had no living family, his wife and son were his only relatives. The house legally became the property of the Thai government. According to their rules, If no relative claimed it within 20 years, it belonged to the state. Exactly 20 years passed. Around 2017, the Thai government sold the property to a real estate company. 20 years is a long time, right? Things change a lot. Some neighbors had died, others had moved away to find work. Only that house sat silently for 2 decades. Maybe that's why the surrounding residents had forgotten its dark history. And it was precisely when people stopped paying attention that the true, terrifying haunted house story began. The real estate company sold the house to a wealthy family who planned to open a business there. William's old neighborhood had become a bustling commercial street. The rich family planned to tear the place down and build a restaurant. But they had problems right from the start. When the construction crew stepped inside to begin demolition, they saw William. He was standing right in the middle of the living room, staring out at them with a menacing look. Those workers dropped their tools and bolted. So, the wealthy family, Uncle 3 calls them the Olivia family, started bringing in tons of spirit mediums and exorcists to clean the place up. They had all kinds of ghost hunters trying every trick in the book, but they couldn't banish William's spirit. Every single one of them ended up running for their lives after encountering his ghost. The Olivia family was left with a choice: either abandon the whole project or keep bringing in even more powerful exorcists. While they were constantly cycling through spiritual masters, they decided to use William's house as a storage unit. But the poor warehouse guards were constantly tormented at night. They reported that around midnight, William's spirit would choke them. Sometimes he'd press down on their bodies, other times he'd choke them, leaving actual handprints on their necks. One guard was even more terrified. He woke up in the middle of the night to see William hanging right in the center of the living room, with his tongue hanging out a full meter long. No employee dared to stay there for more than a week. This ghost story started spreading like wildfire across the developing urban area. The Olivia family went around asking the elderly people in the neighborhood about the house. The old-timers, knowing the full story, told the Olivia family all about William's tragic life. But the house was in too prime a location to waste. So, the daughter of the family, also named Olivia, posted an offer on a Thai spiritual forum. She publicly called for any master exorcist who could banish William's restless soul, promising a massive reward: a brand new house in that same developed area. With a huge prize, naturally, a lot of people showed up to try their luck. Not many succeeded, until one young man did. He introduced himself as a Chinese Taoist priest, only about 25 years old. Uncle 3 calls him James. The Olivia family was skeptical at first because all the previous exorcists looked seasoned and older. But James, despite his youth, managed to pull it off. He set up an altar, performed the ritual, and successfully trapped the ghost of William in a ceramic jar. Everything went smoothly, except for the moment James was about to capture the spirit. William's hand reached out and pointed directly at James. James just figured the ghost was full of hate and that the pointing was its last dying gesture of defiance. Since this wasn't unusual for an exorcist, James didn't dwell on it. He decided the spirit was extremely malicious, so he took the jar and had it burned immediately to destroy the soul completely. keeping their promise, the Olivia family gave James the house. Then they finally started demolishing William's old place. The first 2 days were normal, but on the third day, an electrician was removing old wiring when he somehow got electrocuted. He was burned completely black. And here's the really creepy part. The man suffered third-degree burns, just like William's son. The Olivia family called James back immediately. They suspected the electrician's death was tied to the spiritual issues. James was shocked when he got there. He could still feel the heavy, cold yin energy, the energy of the dead, clinging to the house. Even though James had captured and destroyed William's soul, the dark presence remained. James tore the house apart, searching for whatever was radiating such powerful dark energy. A spirit has to anchor itself to something. A creature, a stone, a doll. Finally, he found a small wooden box. James could feel an intense, heavy, dark energy coming from this box. But he couldn't find a key to open it, so he put it back where he found it. He decided to summon the soul of the dead electrician to ask him what happened. But James sat there for half a day, and the electrician's spirit never showed up. This was super weird. If a soul isn't around after death, there are only two possibilities. Either they've gone home, or their soul has been captured. This is when James got scared. According to the Taoist tradition he practiced, a spirit that dares to consume other spirits must be something far worse, a demon, or something even higher level. He started planning to exorcise this new threat. James headed home to grab more tools for the job. On the way, he kept seeing William's ghost in his mind. Every spirit James had ever exorcised either begged or fought back. William just stood there and pointed at him. It was completely abnormal. Then it hit him. If there was a demon capturing souls, why hadn't it eaten William's soul? Could this demon be connected to William? And had James accidentally destroyed an innocent soul? Because of this doubt, James didn't rush back. Instead, he started digging into the house's history, checking old newspapers and records. Meanwhile, construction workers were still going into work on the new building. The horrible news kept coming. 5 more workers were electrocuted and died, all suffering third-degree burns. After this insane sequence of deaths, the Olivia family finally sealed up the house. They decided not to resume construction until they figured out the cause. Too many people had died. James eventually found the local elders and learned William's full tragic story. That's when he realized the terrible link. William's son and all the dead workers shared the exact same cause of death: third-degree burns. James suspected that the little boy's soul was still there and was haunting the place. That very night, James went back to the exact spot where he had captured William. He found the small, heavy, wooden box again. Suddenly, the image of William pointing came flooding back. It wasn't hatred. William wasn't pointing at James at all. It was a warning. William was trying to point at the cabinet behind James. James immediately ripped open the wooden cabinet. Inside, there was a key. He tried the key in the wooden box, and it fit perfectly. When he opened it, what he found was the dried, mummified remains of a 7-year-old child. It was William's son. The deep resentment of the remains, watching his father commit suicide, seeing strangers try to capture his father. and then actually destroying his father's soul, had turned the child into a demon seeking revenge. William was only trying to protect that spot. He just didn't want anyone to discover his son's body. A soul, even in death, is still protecting its family. But James, having already burned William's soul, didn't know the full story. He immediately set up an altar, performed an exorcism on the dried remains, and permanently sealed the house. But ever since that night, James has never been seen again. Some people gossip that he suffered retribution for destroying the soul of the kind father. Others think James was overwhelmed with guilt and simply gave up the exorcism business for good. Whatever the reason, James definitely stopped practicing. And that's how the painful story of William and his son ended. Now, back to the scriptwriter. After scouting the house, he presented his script to the director, swearing it was a true story. The director loved it. It had twists, tragedy, a dark family love angle, and that gruesome detail about the child falling into the boiling pot. He was sold. The director insisted on visiting the house for location scouting, wanting to inject even more shock value into the film by shooting inside the actual haunted site. When he talked to the neighbors, everyone knew the terrifying history of the house. It was too scary. Too many people had died there. The director was totally thrilled. He marched right inside to check it out. You might not believe this. Uncle 3 said he couldn't believe it either. But the director took 3 steps inside the house and stepped on a live wire. He was instantly electrocuted and died. His body burned to a crisp, suffering third-degree burns. The scriptwriter had insisted the house was cleansed. It was an old, damp house with exposed wires, sure, but typically, power to a derelict building is disconnected, right? Yet, the director was electrocuted to death right there. This remains one of the most famous ghost stories on Thailand's spiritual forums. So, did James actually spare the child's soul? Or, and this is the really chilling thought, did the demon child kill James that very night?